a year for it to go from incident to actual trial. Or some sort of, if it does go to trial, usually it's around this time. So I applaud officials in Minneapolis for getting this thing, into a courtroom in that amount of time.
And there was a lot of speculation
that
it was going to get dragged out because of getting the jury, getting an unbiased jury, but no, they're right on track.
Yeah, and Court TV will air all of the opening arguments today, and then you'll be able to stream online anything that's not on live TV. But it's going to be interesting over the next month, and we're going to be on top of it every step of the way, Rachel. All right, I want to welcome in our Powerhouse panel on this Monday morning. We start with our White House correspondent, Emerald Robinson. Washington Times reporter Alex Sawyer is with us this morning. Political analyst Mark Halperin is here, and former Marine Captain Matt Tito coming back to join us here on Wake Up America. Matt, nice to see you again. I want to welcome in Alex. Nice to have you on the show. I read a little bit of some of your articles for the Washington Times over the weekend. So I want to dive into those in a minute. But first, I'm going to play you guys a soundbite from Kate Bedingfield. She's in the communications office at the White House. I want to get your reaction. She claims that what's happening at the border right now is cyclical and happens all the time. Take a listen.
What we see from the data is that these surges are cyclical. They're cyclical. They're not the result of one administration's policies or another administration's policies. They're the result of, for example, weather disasters in the region. They're the result of people fleeing poverty and violence. So we saw spikes in 2014. We saw them in 2019 when the Trump administration had perhaps the cruelest imaginable policies in place, family separation, to try to deter people from coming, and they still came.
All right, Emerald, I would like to start with you. Good morning. These are not like phases of the moon or the tide or something like that. We have seen surges in the past, but depending on what you read over the weekend, we could be approaching record territory when it comes to people crossing the border very soon. Why won't the administration just acknowledge that they've created a huge problem at our southern border?
Because then they would be admitting guilt. And they would be admitting that the policies did drive and incentivize thousands of migrants, mostly unaccompanied minors, to the border. Look, there are cycles of migration, but we haven't even hit the high season. Usually it starts about right now as we're getting into April. Spring is the time that we see the surges. And as you said, the numbers are well engulf any surge we've seen in the last couple of decades. Even Biden's own DHS has admitted that, just not the White House.
Mark, you've covered many White Houses. At some point, you have to cut your losses, though, and just acknowledge that, yes, what's happening down there is, in fact, a crisis. Let's acknowledge it. Let's move forward. Let's let the media have access to these facilities. These blackouts are totally ridiculous right now. The Texas Senator Ted Cruz and his delegation, they're doing the job the press should be doing.
Incredible video that Senator Cruz shot. And if you think about, say, Cory Booker, the senator from New Jersey, Democrat, had shot video like that of the Trump administration down on the border. Imagine how much play that video would be getting, how much discussion. I think that, if you think they're going to eventually solve it, eventually admit that their policies are part of a cause, that's not happening this week. It didn't happen last week. And I think we're going to wait and see what they do when they realize that this human flood, human physics is stronger than natural physics in terms of politics. This human flood is going to continue, and they simply don't have the policies in place that are going to address it anytime soon.
Alex, I want to bring you into the conversation. Let me play you some sound from Ted Cruz. He was down there with a delegation of, I believe, 18 other Republican senators. He invited many Democrats. Nobody would join him. But here's some of what he saw while he was down at the border. Take a look.
Please give dignity to the people. Please give dignity to the people.
So you work for the commissioner, your senior advisor. You were hired 2 weeks ago, and you're instructed to ask us to not have any pictures taken here.
Please respect the people.
Because the political leadership at DHS does not want the American people to know it.
Please respect the rules,
You keep standing in front of the pictures, so you don't want the pictures taken. The rules are arbitrary, and they're designed to keep the American people in the dark.
Dignity and respect. That's all we ask.
Well,
dignity
no, it's
and
not.
Respect.
You're asking, is this dignity and respect? Look at these people. There's a pandemic.
Please give dignity and respect to the people.
It's just unbelievable to see that, Alex. By the way, everyone, all those kids, there's hundreds of kids in these little rooms. The COVID transmission rate is at over 10% right now at these facilities. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that one of the major problems with this is what Senator Cruz highlighted, is that the American public aren't being able to see this. And the mainstream media, we're really not hearing much outrage from them about being kept out. The ACLU had launched lawsuits last summer when they thought the press wasn't being able to cover the peaceful protests across the country. I'm wondering where those groups are now, why they aren't suing to get involved and let the media in and to cover not only the COVID transmission rate, but also the fact that I believe it's the Donna facility should be at 250 people for COVID compliance, and it's at 4,000. Wow. Out of COVID, without the pandemic, I think the capacity is 1,000. That's unbelievable. And if it was under the Trump administration, we would have that across the board on all networks.
And Alex, she's saying, give these people their dignity. They are, it looks like, honestly, it looked like a morgue to me because nobody's moving. They're all, I guess everybody's asleep. Everybody's under those silver, FEMA blankets that you typically see during, disaster relief, hurricane relief, something like that. There's no dignity to the situation that these kids and these young people are living in right now. That's right. And also, not only to mention that, if this was happening during the Trump administration, like we saw, those similar blankets, the similar kids in cages that we heard repeatedly, you would see the pictures everywhere. You would see the media screaming about it, demanding to get in and be able to tell the story. And that's just not the case here. Matt, President Trump said over the weekend that he's considering traveling from Florida, where you are right now, to the border. I believe he said in Texas. Now, the president has done something like this. He's done this in the past. Is this showboating, or would this actually be a good thing to have the former president go to the border? Or would that just be kind of calling out the Biden administration?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. Obviously, he's not president right now, so there's not much he can do. But a lot of the Border Patrol agents and the ICE agents have reached out to President Trump. And, since he was the president of borders and the president of, keeping immigration under control, they respect him highly. And they think maybe if he comes down, he can do something about it. He can use his platform to maybe get through to the Biden administration. But I highly doubt that. Listen, with 57% of Americans only disapproving of what's going on at the border, you just wonder what the other 43% are looking at right now. We had that video of Ted Cruz in front of the Rio Grande over the weekend, and he had mentioned that somebody just died moments before. I thought I was watching Bear Grylls on an episode of Man vs. Wild.
Yeah, seriously.
And without Ted Cruz and other senators, we would have no idea what's going on at those facilities. Senator Lankford posted a picture of one of the pods that's supposed to have 80 people in it. It has over 800. And that's a problem with the COVID rate being at 10%. We need to do something about this. And now the military has accepted the request to house these migrants at military bases. So now military bases are going to become a daycare facility. And I know they have bigger problems than that right now to take care of.
Mark, you served for more than 9 years. Just quickly, how do you feel about that, by the way? How does the chain of command feel about that?
Yeah, well, that's not the mission of the military, to be a daycare facility for illegal immigrants coming across the border. We have other fish to fry. We have troops in the Middle East. We're trying to get out of there. We have, a lot going on. So this takes away from the priority of what is the mission in the military, and it's simply just distracting right now.
That's a good point. All right, Mark, I do want to ask you, just with your experience, this, to me, and Emerald, I'm sure you feel the same way. Alex, I don't know how you feel about this, but to see Texas Senator Ted Cruz down there covering this with his cell phone, and other senators, Senator Lankford, somebody threatened to take his phone away, and I guess he said something to the effect of, excuse me, but you're not going to be touching my personal property, my cell phone. I'm a U.S. senator. But the blackout that's happening with the press, at this point, this crisis has been going on for more than a month. The media should be down there. They should be allowed access. We've got a correspondent, Logan Raddick. From what I've heard from him, it's very challenging to get compelling video because they've got everything blocked off. How concerning is this, Mark?
This is what governments do when they have unpopular policies. I just keep thinking about the Vietnam War and how American governments tried to block the media as much as they could from covering things, from denying the truth that people saw. Good for Senator Cruz for doing what he did. I'd like Democrats to be as aggressive. I will say this is one issue where the incompetence and the inadequacy of the policies is so extreme that the media has turned a little bit on the Biden administration on this issue. There is an effort to try to get more openness, and I hope it continues, because it's not about politically embarrassing the administration.
Exactly.
It's about helping figure out how to solve this problem in a humanitarian way that respects the rule of law. The current policies don't seem up to the task of doing either of those, let alone both.
They say about 7% of the media identifies as conservative, Emerald. But, right now you turn on CNN, MSNBC, many of the same questions, many, not all, but many of the same questions are being asked with regard to transparency. Outside of that, they're applauding the Biden administration as the administration of humanity. Let me play you a soundbite from Senator Dan Sullivan, who says the Biden administration had very, very good advance warning that something like this would happen for rolling back Trump-era policies. Take a listen.
Heartbreaking and what you see, and it's shocking. And what I've been calling for in a respectful way, like I try to work in a bipartisan way, is for the president, for the vice president to come down and to see what we saw, to hear what we heard from officials who are on the front lines. They were warned that if they undertook these major policy changes, getting rid of, for example, the Remain in Mexico policy, and making sure that exceptions to Title 42 for families bringing 6-year-olds or under and for unaccompanied minors, if they made those changes, which they did, that they would see this surge.
Emerald, your thoughts? They had it in black and white. They were warned.
They absolutely know. And I think that's why you don't see them acknowledge it. They knew this was going to happen. And at the very least, they knew they were going to release 25,000 migrants from the Remain in Mexico policy into the United States during a pandemic, and that they weren't going to be able to quarantine them if they were COVID positive.
Right.
But they absolutely knew this was going to happen. And just look at the disparity in what they're doing at the border and what they're asking average Americans to do. Over the weekend, there was some talk of vaccine, some reporting on vaccine passports and the potential for that. And yet they're going to let people into the country at this rate, piled on top of each other, and they don't want voter ID laws.
All right, panel, we'll leave it there. By the way, Dr. Fauci has yet to comment on the situation on the border. He's commented on everything else over the last 13 months when it comes to coronavirus. Yeah, but not the border. Panel, we got to leave it there. We'll see you again at the top of the hour. Let's check in with Rachel right now. She's with us. She's got to look at headlines on this Monday morning. Hey, Rachel.
Hey, Rob. Thanks so much. Severe weather drenching Tennessee. At least 4 people are dead and up to 130 others rescued. 7 inches of rain soaking Nashville over the weekend. This marking the second highest 2-day rainfall total ever recorded in that city. Now, the mayor declaring a local state of emergency yesterday due to the unprecedented conditions. And a grave milestone in Myanmar. Security forces killing at least 114 people, including several children, in one of the deadliest weekends since the February coup. Myanmar forces reportedly opening fire yesterday on a crowd attending a student's funeral. And check this out. A convoy of fuel tanker trucks in Peru exploding, causing damage on a highway that connects several cities there. The incident being blamed on rocks falling from a hill that hit one of the trucks carrying gasoline, causing a spill and a chain reaction explosion. Wow. Authorities have not yet confirmed the number of deaths or injuries there. Well, we still have much more to cover on Wake Up Americans this morning, starting with someone who keeps missing the mark, if you will, on cultural appropriation. Tom Hanks' son, Chet, the actor and rapper who's been criticized in the past for using a fake Caribbean accent along with other strange antics, was hopefully trying to be funny when he said this.
Hey, guys. Look, I just wanted to tap in really quick. I just got this feeling, man. That this summer is, it's about to be a white boy summer.
Okay, so you said white boy summer there, seemingly an attempt play on words to the song, regularly quoted line from Megan Thee Stallion and Nicki Minaj's Hot Girl Summer. Still, the internet didn't get it, didn't like it. Some people simply just shocked still at the fact that Tom, one of the most respected, non-controversial A-listers in Hollywood, was Chet's father, saying things like, I physically cannot imagine Chet and Tom Hanks actually talking to each other.
Wait.
That's Tom Hanks' son, yes.
Really?
I see the confusion on your face. That is his son with Rita Wilson. Many people saying that they're left in a bit of a haze, perhaps, after this ordeal, saying Chet Hanks is proof that you can do everything right in the world and your kids will still embarrass you. But again, many people just maybe thinking he put his foot in his mouth. Now, speaking of feet, this is just a downright disturbing announcement. This was topping Twitter all throughout the night. I don't know if you saw this. Rapper and singer Lil Nas X is launching a controversial pair of what he calls Satan shoes. Okay? They're Nike Air Max, allegedly containing 1 drop of human blood.
That's nice. Uplifting.
666 pairs made, costing over $1,000 per pair.
Kind of drags you down, actually.
Here's the thing, though. Nike says they have nothing to do with it.
Oh.
They released a statement saying Nike does not design this. They do not endorse this. Neither does South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, taking to Twitter to address the shoes that, just like you said, Rob, drag you down. This put me in such a weird mood last night after I saw that this was even a thing. She said, our kids are being told that this kind of product is not only okay, it's exclusive. You know what's more exclusive? Their God-given eternal soul. We're in a fight for our soul of our nation. We need to fight hard. We need to fight smart, and we have to win.
Kristi Noem, 2024. By the way, the same weekend as Passover and Palm Sunday.
It was
weird
just
timing.
such an odd announcement.
Right.
Everyone chiming in. We saw the likely #1 pick for the NFL draft, Trevor Lawrence, saying a line has to be drawn somewhere. Shake my head.
You know, we do things like we buy expensive art so when people come over, we can show it off. With something like this, or are you going to be like, no, dude, it's got human blood in them, so it's great.
Such a
for jogging.
dark place you have to be in, I think, to announce that kind of shoe. He had a strange weekend full of different announcements that people were just kind of surprised by. But the thing was, Rob, the one thing I did notice on social media, I was reading through the comments, not a single person seemed to be endorsing that announcement in any way.
Makes sense.
All right, let's switch gears now, though, to a wild situation at the Suez Canal where we had breaking news overnight that their cargo ship that's been stuck, delaying millions of dollars an hour in goods, has finally been partially refloated. Joining us now to talk about the latest on this is business and market analyst Seth Denson. Seth, good morning to you, and thanks for joining us.
Morning, Rachel.
Now, initial reports said that 1,300-foot, 200,000-ton Ever Given, as it's called, got wedged in the canal because of high winds and a sandstorm. And now we're hearing authorities saying possibly more so because of human error. What's the latest?
Yeah, I don't know that we really know right now. Certainly when this is all said and done, there'll be an investigation. But I got to tell you, on my little fishing boat, I've got a depth finder that helps me stay out of the dredge. So I got to think that these big ships, as technologically advanced, have sonar capabilities. And while they're claiming it was high winds and lack of visibility, and I'm sure that's important, you got to think about how many of these containers were on there. Visibility is probably already pretty hard. They got to rely on their technology. If they weren't keeping up with that technology and doing proper maintenance, that could be a problem.
Can you imagine being the person or people responsible? Now, we know tugboats and dredgers have been working to move that massive ship, Seth. Hundreds of boats have been lined up, though, in a even more massive traffic jam waiting to pass through. So how much trade are we talking here, and when do we think things are going to get back to normal? We just saw a little bit of improvement over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, so we're talking about just in the 6 days, somewhere close to probably around $90 billion of trade. Some estimates as low as $60 billion. But still, when you're talking 60 or 90 billion, that's a lot of goods that are passing through this. Remember, this is one of the 3 largest trade routes in the world. And so it has effectively been shut down. But there's a secondary issue here. Ships, instead of going on their normal route, are now heading south around the Cape of Good Hope, and that's going to delay shipping going forward. So this could have an impact, not just this week, but in the weeks to come.
Well, you talk about that going around Cape Hope, going through Africa. There also seems to be concerns about pirates, a real legitimate issue that people still like to poke fun at, but it is a concern down there. That could increase cost and shipping times. How much of an added issue would that be?
Well, just from a cost perspective, you're looking at about an additional $1 million in just the shipping cost just for fuel. So you've got that. Then you have the time impact, right? So again, it's about 14 days to go around the Cape. But you mentioned another point, and this is a valid point, is the risk of pirates. I mean, we had a movie. You talked about Tom Hanks a minute ago, right? There's a movie recently about this. But the reality is a lot of these cargo ships, because going through the Strait of Hormuz and the Suez Canal, they're not allowed to have arms. So not even small arms. So they're going down this area and they're unarmed, and that leaves them vulnerable.
I don't think people were even thinking about that initially. It was just, okay, the ship's blocked. We got to get it out. We got to get trade back to going. And now there's so many alternate routes that are going to cause concern. Now, we did see a little bit of improvement, as we mentioned, over the weekend. There was quite a celebration because of that. And I believe we have that queued up if we could play that for you. All right, Seth, we hear all the horns honking, lots of the tugboats there, the dredgers that were trying to move this. This moved 2 inches. After all that work, 2 inches is all we got through, right?
Yeah, it's a game of inches, right? I don't know if I was watching that or a soccer game, but nonetheless, hey, listen, let's celebrate the victories, but let's get it out. I think right now the stern is free. That's the latest that I've heard, and it's moved about 100 feet. So I got to think those horns are going off a lot right now. But we still got a little ways to go to get this thing completely free.
All right, yeah, that shot we were just showing was the latest we had. All right, let me ask you real quick before we go, because this is something that I think people are watching at home initially thought, all right, that's wild to see, something we haven't seen before, but it probably won't affect me. How does this actually affect the consumer?
Well, again, in two ways, timing and cost, right? The longer that these things are delayed, you got cost and demand issues that are going to play into it. Those ships and containers that are going to have to go around the Cape of Good Hope, that's going to be an additional cost. But timing, Rachel, we joked about it last week a little bit about your Amazon Prime package might be delayed, but that's reality. This could delay you getting some of the goods and services you might need.
And we know how much that drives the people insane. All right, Seth Denson, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Rachel.
You're watching Wake Up America, and we'll be right back. Today's business headlines: the Dow Jones, NASDAQ, and S&P all starting the week in green. The Dow jumping more than 450 points on Friday. And putting the pedal to the metal is adding up. Gas prices on the rise as more people are hitting the road. The average price of regular gas reportedly up a nickel a gallon over the past 2 weeks. San Francisco said to be the most expensive place to fill your tank, while Baton Rouge is the cheapest. The housing market is booming, however, here and across the world, raising fears of possible bubbles, prompting some governments to intervene to avoid a pop. Pre-pandemic worries about an overheated market growing in parts of Europe, Asia, and Canada as trillions in worldwide COVID relief, along with more people working from home, appear to be turbo-changing markets even more. Slicing up the Big Apple, if you will, Manhattan, not so popular during the height of the pandemic, now said to be the place to be for professionals with young children. Good to know. They're apparently fueling a surge in home sales. Both COVID vaccines in the city making it reopening said to be exciting to many and taking advantage of price discounts and low interest rates. And out to lunch taking on a whole new meaning at Amazon. A former employee filing a lawsuit against the company over missed meal breaks. The suit alleges employees were denied the required 30-minute break for a 5-hour shift. It also claims workers had to deal with understaffing and immense workloads. And before we go into the next hour, Rob, you know, it was a little dark earlier what we were talking about.
Okay, the shoe thing, the blood thing?
Yeah, I just wanted to lighten up a second with this video of a 10-year-old boy reunited with his lost dog after 2 months. You know, it's been a hard year.
2 months?
2 months. The dog ran away chasing a rabbit.
Wow.
And then he's just so happy now.
And they found the pup?
And they found him.
Where was he? Any idea?
Just ran away chasing a rabbit.
Chasing that rabbit.
Mom coordinated, got him back, and the little 10-year-old can't stop crying because he's just so happy. And maybe that's what we needed to get us through this Monday, if you will, Rob. Must
love dogs. All right, another hour Wake Up America starts right now. Good morning. Welcome into Wake Up America. It is Monday, March the 29th. I'm Rob Finnerty.
And I'm Rachel Roller. Let's take a look at some of the stories that we're following for you this morning. The surge on the border grows day by day, but where is Vice President Harris? We're going to have the very latest from the southern border. Plus, Georgia's voting bill implementing new provisions causing President Biden's Justice Department to look into that matter. And opening arguments for the Derek Chauvin case set to start today in one of the most highly anticipated court cases since O.J. Simpson.
I know, unbelievable. 10 months ago that took place, and this will all be televised. It's going to be interesting to see it play out, and it all starts today. The theater of the opening argument, the and the closing argument, the most theatrical moments.
And highly watched, of course.
Exactly, exactly. All right, I want to bring in our powerhouse panel. We start with our White House correspondent, Emerald Robinson. Washington Times reporter Alex Sawyer is joining us this morning. Political analyst Mark Halperin is here, and former Marine Captain Matt Tito back with us here on Wake Up this morning. Alex, I want to start with you. I read a piece that you just did recently for the Washington Times talking about the situation in Georgia. A lawsuit was just filed over the weekend in federal court claiming it is unconstitutional to restrict voting rights to all Georgians. And they say in the suit that this is going to impact African Americans in the state of Georgia. But a lot of the stuff that they're doing is just sort of rolling back different laws and policies that were implemented as a result of the coronavirus pandemic leading up to the November 3rd elections.
Yeah, you know, there's the argument from these liberal advocacy groups is that these laws, like what was passed in Georgia, there's also one lawsuit filed in Iowa with their GOP legislature passing recently an election law there, is that it's racist. The problem in Georgia is that they say you have to now have a photo ID to request an absentee ballot. That measure was put into place to help with the issue in the worries over signature verification. So these liberal groups have said that the problem here is that minorities don't have access to photo IDs the same as white voters. So that's one of their arguments. The other is that they're part of the Georgia law says that you can't pass water or snacks out while people wait in line. And they're also saying that that targets minorities because it's in minority areas that they have longer waits.
Is there any truth to that? I mean, I know it varies from state to state, but we hear this constantly. And you're reporting, Alex, does it seem like there's truth to that voting having an ID or a driver's license? Because it doesn't have to be a driver's license necessarily, just a state-issued identification with your photo. Does that sway in one direction or the other to African Americans?
Obviously that you can find research to support or whatever poll you want to support your point. But I think that recently it was actually the Senate Rules Committee had a hearing on, it was the For the People Act, and this issue came up. And one of the conservative witnesses mentioned that it's in fact, he argued, racist to say that minorities can't obtain photo IDs, that statement in and of itself it undermines their own argument.
Matt, and I know that you guys have done a lot of this in your work down in Florida, but basically you need an ID you can't pick up a prescription without an ID. If you're getting a fishing license, you need to have a photo ID. You need a photo ID to do a lot of stuff in this country. Shouldn't voting be one of those?
And so to say that that's racist is absolutely insane. But as a former political candidate, I want to touch on the bottled water and food issue. I worked the polls for the early voting, which was about 10 or 11 days, and on election day. And what I'll tell you, there's a lot of harassment that goes on in early voting. You have all the political candidates there. You have the activist groups. In this past election, you have the Trump supporters, the Biden supporters. And I'll tell you what, if I had 20 volunteers with Matt Tito shirts on handing out prime rib sandwiches and bottled waters.
There were more than 20, Matt. There were more than 20.
Yeah, more than 20. But don't you think that would be a little bit of bribery? I may get some votes. And I saw that going on. I saw trucks coming in with food and bottled water and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, and most of us here have been to Disney World, right? You wait in line for 3 hours. Does somebody from Disney World come around and give you a bottle of water? I don't think so.
And it is not just a bottle of water on a hot day, and that's what they try to make it seem like. They try to make it seem like, no, we just want that. It's a lot more than just water. I want to move on and talk a little bit about Mike Pompeo. This sort of went under the radar on Friday. Mark, I know you've been there, the West Side Conservative Club, which is literally just a little Rotary Club in rural Iowa, but it typically hosts candidates that have declared or are thinking about running for president, and Mike Pompeo spoke there on Friday. C-SPAN actually covered this, and I was looking at their lower third, that's what we call it in the business, with the writing on the screen, and they said kicking off their road to the White House 2024. So, Mark, is this the opening bell for 2024, Mike Pompeo?
Well, it's the little Rotary Club that could. They've got incredible power. Mike Pompeo is probably as aggressive as anyone right now in looking to see whether there's a place for him in the presidential trail if Donald Trump doesn't run. I can't imagine him running if former President Trump runs. But big question for me is why they all are certain that Iowa is going to be important. The Democrats may well move Iowa out of its starting position. If that happens, it'll be interesting to see if Republicans go their own way. But right now, it's a sign of just how aggressive Mike Pompeo is being, that despite that uncertainty, he went, got a pretty good reception. Iowa's not so unlike Kansas. His wife was born in Iowa, so he's playing all the normal cards.
Right. Yeah, bordering state right around the corner from his home state of Kansas. I looked at a couple of schedules. So Rick Scott Emerald is going to be in Cedar Rapids, Iowa on April 1st, and Mike Pence, former vice president, this surprised me, but he's going to be there. He's making a big speech on April 29th. So it seems like here we are 20 months away from 2022, and it has already begun.
Yeah. Well, look, Mike Pence knows that as far as the GOP establishment, he's still the darling. He just doesn't get that much interest from the public in the polls we've seen so far. I'll go back to Mark was at CPAC, that CPAC straw poll. He was barely on it. Look, Pompeo, he has not been shy about his hopes for the future. He's extremely media savvy. He's definitely dipping his toe in the water. But I agree with Mark. It all depends on what Donald Trump does.
I think so, too.
Emerald,
if Trump stays out of it, is Mike Pompeo the front runner? Mark?
No, I don't think so. I right now, my first tier is Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, and Governor DeSantis of Florida. I think those three guys right now have the leg up on the field, but it's so early.
Alex, your thoughts?
I think Yeah, I think it's a nice story right now, but Trump is basically paralyzing the rest of the Republican Party until he makes a decision. So it's a nice story. They're all going to Iowa. I don't think it means much.
Yeah, I've said it before. He's going to play kingmaker unless he decides to be the king himself. Alex, you think, by the way, Florida's got 3 people that could run for president: DeSantis, Marco Rubio, and Rick Scott. But I see Rubio as I see him on the ticket, but in the VP spot.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation about that. I recall back in 2015 during the GOP primary for 2016 to get on the ticket. But I have to say, I recall from the CPAC straw poll, if it wasn't Donald Trump on as the nominee, it looks like it's Ron DeSantis is to lose if he doesn't want to get in the race. He had an overwhelming support, and the way he's handled COVID, Republicans love it.
Matt Tito, I know you're in Tampa, Florida, a great city there, biggest port in the state for industry, not necessarily for cruises, but it's got the 3rd biggest cruise port in the state. Should cruise ships be allowed to take passengers out to sea once again?
Yeah, absolutely. The question will be, do you need a passport, a vaccine passport to get on the ship or not? Governor DeSantis is all about it. I know there's been some pushback, but it's time to get back on cruises. It's time to open business back up. If you, as an American, make the decision that you want to take the risk to go on a cruise, you should be allowed to do so. I mean, the cruise industry has just gotten crushed over the past year. So it's time to get them back up and running. And, I would definitely go on a cruise. Why not?
Yeah. And it's like, I think, go ahead, Mark.
You left out 4 of the 7 potential Florida presidential candidates. It's not just Scott and Cruz and Scott and Rubio and DeSantis. You left out Donald Trump. You left out Mike Huckabee, you left
Andrew
out
Gilliam,
Ben Carson, and you left out.
Have they all moved to Florida?
They all live in Florida
now. That's right.
Everyone's moving to Florida now.
One day.
And Newt Gingrich spends a lot of time
down
Don
there.
Jr.
Make it 8. Don Jr.
And Ivanka. Yeah.
What are we doing?
All right, panel. We'll pick this right back up at the right around the next. After the commercial break is when we're going to resume this conversation. Mark, that's a great point. What was the name of the guy who ran for governor against DeSantis? Andrew Gillum? Is that who it was? Gillum, right? Whatever happened to him?
I rank his chances less high right now.
Yes, some weird
he
photos.
He got caught with a prostitute in a hotel in Miami. That's what happened.
You would know, Matt. Thank you. Thank you for the specifics.
Yep.
Yes, appreciate it. We will see you guys right after the break. I will pick this up in just a minute. Let's check in with Rachel right now. She's got a little bit more on what to watch for today. Hey, Rachel.
Just have a plethora of information.
Yeah,
there,
Mark
Rob.
was like, a couple more that I want to bring up
While
here
I
for
have
you.
you.
Yes.
All right, let's take a look at what to watch for. First up, President Joe Biden is expected to deliver remarks today about the administration's COVID-19 response and vaccination progress. Also, more than 10 months after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, opening statements set to begin today in the murder trial of former police officer Derek Chauvin. And then coming up right here on Wake Up America, George